Okay, so let's start talking about the reset. When we start looking at our design, we have actually a little bit of formatting built in. Our H1s or H2s, they all have certain sizes. There's all margin and padding that's just automatically built in. We need to actually start removing a lot of that stuff so we don't have any conflicts when you're trying to design our stuff. So there's a number of things that we could have. I mean, for one, we see these really, really large images when we don't have any type of formatting, and we need to be able to control those. So, and the other thing, let's say that we have a word in here, but it's a really long word, or maybe, it's like a, so this word is maybe, like a URL or something. When I start trying to shrink for that, what do we see? I'm actually losing it. It's going off the page. So that is problematic. The really large word isn't breaking down. Now these words could. So there's different things that we have to do to try to incorporate for that. Okay. So when we have our design, we want to start fresh before we start doing our utility classes on our BEM designs for the block and the elements. All of that stuff, we want to actually kind of get rid of all of our designs. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through each little piece of what we're doing. Now, this is not my original, CSS reset. There are a lot of different methodologies for doing a CSS reset. I really like this one. This one hits a lot of things that I want to hit. Like right off the bat, we have sizing issues. Now, you guys have at this point seen already the difference between trying to determine sizes when you're not using border box. So we want everything to be sized based off a border box. So this would be the first rule that I would have. And I'm going to, write a comment before and after so that I know that this is all my reset code. That's why I have it here. So I am using the elements themselves. I'm using the wildcard for the universal selector. I want to select everything. I want to select the pseudo elements that are before anything and the pseudo element that is after. And everything I want to be sized based off a boarding box. That just makes it easier on me. That way when I say I want a 150 pixel width box, then all borders, margin, padding, and the actual width is all taken into account for that total width for that box, instead of only the interior of that box being 150 and then everything else is adding to it. Okay. Now before, when we were doing the other BEM stuff, we pulled all margins out. So let's watch what happens to that. We want to see margins and padding start to get peeled away. So I'm going to go here and I will unselect this. Okay, now this is again the universal selector, and that is applying the margin. I don't need to do the before and after for these elements, the pseudo elements, because there is no margin for the before and after. So this is fine. Other things that I immediately see that are problematic is the images. So we want to be able to target that. And it's not really just the images. There are other ways that we can actually put pictures. Video, pictures, anything that's using the image. If we were drawing or we were using SVGs, so that's scalable vector graphics. If I have to scroll to the right or left, really what we're doing is we're overflowing the page. So that one is why we want to have this. And this is a like a multiple selector. So anything that I want to select as one of my selectors, I can put a comma after it, so I can select this and this and this and this and this. And this is my rule. I want it to display as block for all of those images and stuff, and I want it to have a max width. So what you'll immediately notice is now I don't have a scroll to the right or left, that my images are staying contained in the page. They're taking up the full space, and because it's using a percent they are now scaling some, which that's useful. So I could do that, further by having, if I wanted to size an image a little bit more and have some margins and padding, I could put that inside of, like a non-semantic element, like a span or a div. But this will help with layout and with sizing. Okay. Other areas. So let's look at this text. Okay. This one in particular right here. If I uncomment this, then all paragraphs, all headings will break at any possible word that they can do. So spaces, yes. Periods, yes. So let's watch that happen. Okay. So now when I shrink down, we want to see how that main one is now jumping to the line. It is defaulting to breaking as much as possible. Okay. So this is helpful. Now, that helps with sizing a bit. Okay. So granted, this was probably an example of only like a URL if you were going to actually do that, but this really helps. So that helps with the sizing not completely breaking when you don't want it to. Okay. Here, this one, the input button, text area select, all of those as the selector. All that's saying is that any of this stuff, I can choose to inherit the font that it already has. If you don't do this, and we put a button in there, then we are technically just using a monospace. It's like some different type of font styles that we have. So font is shorthand, so let's go to W3 Schools. Okay, so if I go to W3 Schools and I look at the fonts, there's more than just saying font family. Let me get to it. Font. There we go. Okay, so this font is shorthand for font style, variant, weight, font size, line height, and font family. Okay, so all of that, there's kind of this default on buttons that it's going to have a certain look, a certain font size, all that stuff. And since you guys have already been playing around with those, what they look like, let's see. Okay, so if you're looking, there's already like text. Unless we are passing it in to have different values, then we're going to end up just adopting that. So that's why we're doing that, is that we are inheriting from what we previously set. So if on our page we set our fonts to be some type of cursive, some type of handwriting, then we can have even our buttons and selectable areas to actually inherit that. In terms of accessibility, this is one of those things right here. This will make and you're not seeing really any of this show up, whether I have that on or not. You might see the text, it looks like it's going a little bit different. This used to be something that's required, is that we didn't use this, but it makes it actually easier to read. We don't need to have to worry about having that on anymore. And then the other thing is the line height. So when I have other text, let me just put some lorem ipsum in there. Okay, so here is some lorem ipsum in there. Waiting for it to update. The line height is actually the space in between the text. Okay, so here I can see that space. This is for readability. And it's suggested that 1.5 be our minimum line height that we have. If I take this off, the words are closer together. I could have a much smaller line height. We default to 1. We could have, say, 0.5, and now our words are running on top of each other. But 1.5 is the suggested best line height. And so we're attaching that to the body. And since we're using cascading style sheets, everything is going to be adopting. So this is a paragraph, but since a paragraph is a child of the body, since everything is inside the body, then it's has the 1.5 as the line height unless I have overridden it. This last one right here, this is for sizing. If I didn't end up having like a lot of text on my stuff, I could choose to make sure that my page is taking up a full page. Okay, so this is desired, and that is the CSS Reset, basically what I would do. I like this one. There isn't really anything that I would maybe change except for maybe doing padding 0. I think that's okay. Also, making sure that there's no margin or padding on anything, and then what I put in is what I want to see. Okay. And then anything else that we would want to do can be set up through utility classes. Okay, so this is what I would do for the CSS reset. Okay, so that should be the first thing that you have in your code. We will end up doing CSS properties. That will come above this, just so it's easy for us to reference, but this is everything that we would need. Changing the border box, dealing with the margins and padding, changing the line height, making so our images won't overflow our page, inheriting font for everything, buttons and stuff, and then dealing with overflow on text. Okay, so that's everything that I would have. This should be a good walkthrough. We will do this in class and talk about it. Good luck. Have fun.